if we just fit in with the rhythm of the world, we're gonna miss out on opportunities to even have the visions and dreams. So we have to be intentional with, I think, 2 things that stand out to me. Be intentional with getting ourselves around the right people. We talked about Greg, big visionary. Every time I talk to him, it expands my vision and my thinking, and that helps me a ton. And 2, I love hunting. The hunt is one thing. There's value in that, the kill, that whole thing. But man, there might be more value in it for me just to get out of the whirlwind of the day to day so I can free my mind and let God talk to me and let my mind work and think bigger.
My friend, your role as a father is critical. You are so important. Three nuggets that hit me from my conversation with Michael today are: one, are you looking for life transformation? Two, have you given up on your dreams? And three, do you feel like you and your family are just fitting in? Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to five kiddos, currently ages 11 to 17, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So, yep, I'm in the thick of it, and I'm working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend Michael Fisk, and I learned so much during this conversation. Enjoy meeting my friend Michael. Check it out, my friends. I'm already smiling ear to ear. I'm pumped to meet a new friend, Michael Fisk. How are you today? Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes.
Right on, I'm good. Thanks, Ned.
Yeah, dude, good to connect with you. Okay, so first off, shout out to Greg Gunn. I had him on the podcast recently, and he's the one who had connected us about 6 months ago. Just such an incredible human. Do you have any kind of connection to Greg or any story of Greg from time with him?
Oh man, we could spend this entire episode talking about Greg. So, uh, yeah, super thankful for him and just where he's been in my life. I actually heard about Greg. I'll give you a quick story. So I think it was probably like 2016, 2017. My sister, who lived a few hours from me, she was starting a business, this juice bar, and they were in the process of getting ready to open and stuff. And she had said, I was on the phone with her. She said, "Hey, this guy's been walking around. He's here visiting family, friends of her husband, and he's been walking on our property with his daughters, praying over property for the last hour and praying for the new business starting and stuff. And he just flew in from Oklahoma. I'm like, this guy flew in from Oklahoma to come pray for your business, and you barely know the guy. Like, who is this guy? It just got
Yeah,
my attention. And
yeah.
fast forward 6 months later, she tells me, "Hey, I've that guy I mentioned to you. He does like family values and stuff.
Hmm.
He does these workshops for families, and he's going to be in town. If you want to come, he'll be here in a couple weeks." I was like, "Yeah, this guy's already got my attention once. I better go see what this guy's about." And didn't know anything about Greg. Didn't know anything about Family ID at the time. We bought our tickets and drove a few hours down the road. A couple weeks later, went into his workshop. Great experience, great resources, great tools. He's a great teacher, great communicator.
Yeah.
Um, and we took that stuff that he had taught at that workshop, and over the next couple of months, we had crafted really what our family mission, vision, and values were. Which I was going at that point, I was going through a season of like, I've been in business and entrepreneurship. I've been a business owner for years now. I spend every day, leading my team and hiring and firing on vision and values. Um, it hit me around that season of like, gosh, I do all this work with my team that are my employees and business partners, but I don't do any of this work at home
Mm,
with my wife and my girls.
yeah.
And I was really starting to feel convicted about that. And then that whole Greg thing popped up, and my wife and I went to that. Again, we spent a couple months crafting what that looks like for our family with his tools he'd given us. And we had ended up building like this 6 foot, it was like a 6 foot by 3 foot uh, big art piece that was basically it said Fisk family. It was
Mm,
all, wood. I built it all from scratch, and it had our mission, vision, values on it. And we hung it in our living room, and the picture ended up on social media. And it was probably a few months later, I get a random call. I'm in my office. I'm like, "Who's this number from Oklahoma?" I answer the call, and, he's like, "Is this Michael Fisk?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is him." He's like, "This is Greg Gunn." And I was like, "Greg Gunn? Like, how'd you get my number and why you
Yeah, yeah.
calling me, you know? I know who you are, but you definitely don't know who I am." And, he was like, "Man, I had seen your photo of your family values that was, online, and I'd heard the story, how this created, and he came to one of my workshops, and we ended up talking for probably a couple hours that day." And, he spoke so much life into me.
Mm,
I think we've talked almost every month since then. This was back in, like, 2017.
wow.
And every time he would call, if I wasn't able to answer it, he would leave me a 5-minute voicemail just praying for my wife
Wow.
and myself as a leader and over
Wow.
my business and my girls. And I was like, "Man, who does that?" And then so there was we can talk about this too, but in 2021 we had decided to travel the US for about a year. And I was like, one of the things that was on our list, we've got to stop in Oklahoma. I got to meet this guy Greg. I talk to him all the time, but we've never actually met in
Wow.
person.
Yeah.
And so we went and spent a whole day with his family, his wife and some of his kids, and we left, and my wife and I were just crying, like, we were crying, like, we were like, "Who is this family?" Like, they are so influential and so
Mm,
impactful and so encouraging. Man, they have been just nothing but positive, so super thankful for Greg. And then he had mentioned probably about 6 months ago, like, he asked if I knew you, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know him." He goes, "Oh, you guys have to connect." And,
mm.
so that's I think why I'm here. That's how we connected, so
Dude, so I actually have a picture of me at an event on my wall right here with Greg in it. And so dudes who are listening, it's like, don't tune out for this, what I'm about to tell you, because it's easy to go, oh, it just sounds like Ned and Michael are rapping about some guy they know that we don't know. Greg's probably in his mid 60s, somewhere like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
60, 50, yeah, 50, 60s, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah, probably
late
60s.
50s, early 60s, something like that. Point is, I'm 40. How old are you?
38.
Okay, you have to have these type of sages in your life. Like, you
Mm,
have to think that you don't need men who've like lived, who've been married 30 years or 40 years in your life. You're tripping, because they have so much to give us. And like, as I hear, I'm like, dude, I'm not leaving anybody a 5-minute message, but that's because I got an 11-year-old to a 17-year-old at home. Like, you're lucky to get me to text you back within 3 days. And that's what I
mm,
don't want dudes to miss, is like, one, you need that sage in your life. And then two, the idea that one day you and I will have a bit bigger capacity to become that. But dude, on my podcast that I had Greg on, so go find this if you haven't listened to it, guys. Dude's like, let's just say he's around 60. Dude's talking all about how his sex game's leveling up, and he's like never stopping the growth. And I love hearing that, because, I think once you're like at that late 30s, early 40s, you have been seeking this arrival point, and you sort of hit this point of, I guess I just will never know everything. There is no arrival. It's all becoming. So it's like kind of freeing in a sense. Um, but to see a dude at 60 still pursuing growth and totally humble, and yeah, just just such a rad dude. So I love
yeah,
that.
every time
I
I
love
talk
that.
to him, I just talked to him a few weeks ago, and right when he answers the phone, I called him to ask him a question about something, and he's like, "Michael, I have to tell you about this major revelation I just had." And I got a phone call, and I'm like, "It's been another hour talking to
Mm,
Greg, and it's just about it's big vision things. It's not small. You leave a conversation from a guy like that, and you go, "Man, I can't, like, I've gotta think bigger. I've
mm,
gotta grow. I've got to
yeah,
do more." Because it's like he just really expands and challenges you to think bigger and grow, which
a
is
hundred
amazing.
percent, 100%. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to the beginning of my questions, and so you already said you're 38, but here's my first question for you. How old do you find yourself today?
Uh, I always tell people I feel like I'm 26, but I'm actually in late 30s now.
What makes you feel 26?
I think I just forget that I'm like, wow, I'm like a full grown man now. Like I'm an
Yeah,
adult.
yeah. I love that.
If that makes sense. I don't know.
Dude, yes, it makes 100%. Like, I would tell you, my wife and I just went to a marriage retreat, call it, with 12 couples through Rise Up
Yeah.
Kings, a Christian organization, and we both left there. I'm telling you, this is in November. Uh, we both left there saying we feel like adults now. Like, I
Mm,
feel like a man, and she's like, I feel like a woman leaving here. We're no longer kids. It
mm.
was so I know exactly what you're saying, and I think that's partly hitting this age, and also growth, which we're going to get into. How many years you been married?
Yeah. So 18 years.
Nice, bro.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I got married young. I was 19. Um, My wife was 23. Actually, when we first got introduced, we were at church together, at the same church. I was visiting. I was kind of new to the church she had been at her whole life, and someone introduced us, and after service one Sunday, and she asked me, she goes, "How old are you?" And I was 18 at the time. I said, "I 18." And she threw her hands up and like walked away, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What? Like who does that?" I was like, and it was 6 months later. She had a ring on her finger, and then 6 months
Dang.
after that, we were married. So we got married young and really fast.
Yeah, dude, that's what's up. So, my wife, I met her on Mother's Day. I was playing drums at church and she walked in. I was 18. She was 19 at the time because she was in college. I was like a senior in high school. And anyways, we got married when I was 21. So it was a couple years later, but met at
Yeah,
church, met young. Good for you, dude.
very
How
cool.
many kiddos do you have?
Yeah, so we've got 3 girls. We've actually had 4 girls. Our first daughter, she passed away,
Mm,
unknown reason. They call it SIDS. She was 28 days old,
wow.
poet. And then we've got Presley, our oldest now. She's 12, almost. So we're getting ready to enter that teenage
Yeah.
phase, which that's that whole season. That's actually why I had called Greg a few weeks ago. I had some questions I wanted to bounce off him about, that new season of,
Mm,
our 12-year-old's really looking forward to turning 13 and being a teenager. That's all
yeah.
she talks about right now.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Which we should chat about that sometime too, because I know you got some kids that are older than mine.
Yeah,
So
my oldest daughter's 17, and it's funny, we just did a podcast, her and I together, of talking about how to maintain and build a relationship. Because
mm,
her and I are super close, and we've
yeah,
had not ups and downs, but like, teenagers and parents, it's like we've had conflict, which is good if it can be good. But
yeah,
anyways, yeah, let's rap about it. So 3 girls, oldest is
yeah.
12,
Three
about to
girls.
go to 13.
Yep. And then we've got a 10-year-old Phoenix. So Presley's our oldest, which you have a daughter named Presley as
I
well,
do,
right? I
yeah,
think.
she's
Yeah.
14.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. And then our youngest is Emery. She's
Emery.
8.
Beautiful,
So
beautiful. And then where
yeah.
do you guys live?
So right now we are living. We just moved here actually from Washington State. Been in Washington State my whole life. Both my wife and I. We moved to East Tennessee, so we're right outside of like Johnson City, Bristol area in Northeast Tennessee.
Love it.
Yep.
Okay, and then what do you do for a living to provide for the family and or provide value in the world?
Yeah, for sure. So this is one of those things too. We could spend an entire episode talking about
Yeah,
this, but
1 minute.
essentially,
Yeah, 1
yeah,
minute.
essentially an entrepreneur. I own a holding company called Blender, and it has 6 different businesses underneath it that are completely all different from each other. Everything from online tools, like if you need a voided check, voidedcheck.com, you can get a voided check. Every up till like if we do manufacturing and development of photo booth equipment and software. And then we've got our latest project is called HostShare, where we're creating essentially a platform, a network for like Airbnb hosts, where they can share unbooked last minute unbooked nights with other hosts, and in return they get to stay anywhere within the network of other hosts on that platform. So
Dude, I checked out
I've
the
essentially
website,
got
it's
a
sick.
central team.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
dope.
did you? Oh,
Such
thanks,
a great
man. Thank
idea.
you.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we have an Airbnb. We're here in Hawaii, right? So our
yeah, yeah,
Airbnb is pretty packed all the time. And
yeah,
it's a spot where friends and family are like come, but to be able to like even open it up to have trades or whatever, pretty sick.
yeah, yeah. For sure. Yeah, we're really excited about it. We've been in beta for the past couple months, and then our full travel stuff comes out here in the next few weeks, which is going to
Cool.
be epic. We've got over 1,000 homes on there right now, and our customers are really eager to start traveling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm sure.
we've
Uh,
been testing it out, and we've had like it's amazing how these unbooked places that half the homes out there sit vacant half the night.
that's crazy.
And we've like my sister just stayed at a place through this platform as we've been testing it out. It was $900 a night. She stayed there for 3 nights for $400 total in cleaning fees. Amazing cabin out in the woods, like, just incredible opportunity, so pretty excited about it.
That's epic. Yeah, so what's that website so people can check it?
Yeah, hostshare.co.
Hostshare.co. Love it, man.
Yep.
Cool. All right, check this out. When did you first embrace fatherhood? So you've been married 18 years. You were about 5 years into the marriage and it's like either we're going to have kids or surprise you're going to be a dad, to the moment that Presley was born to when she starts interacting with you. Right? There's kind of these different stages where
Yeah.
I find that dads stumble into this role, and so for you, when did this feeling of this matters really become a part of you?
Yeah, so, let's see, it was probably 2000 about 2011, 2012 when we were starting to have the kids. It's like, "Okay, we're doing the kid thing now." we waited about 5 years, and it wasn't until, I mentioned that season 2017 where I kinda had that transformation of like, "Man, like, I'm investing all this into my career, but I'm not doing the same thing with my family."
Mhm.
And that was when the kids were, starting to get a little bit older now, and that was probably the season where I was really took this serious. It wasn't
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, I'm just checking this off my list because that's what everyone's supposed to do." But I was like, I actually really want to be intentional, embrace this, and make this a priority. And it probably was the idea of like, I think I've always, before that point, I thought about life as very like, I just kind of react to life. And then I had a really shift of mindset around that time,
Mm.
about 6, 7 years ago, where I was like, I I I wanted to start thinking more multi-generational, and like, what does it look like to be thinking about, what does this family look like in 500 years versus what does the family look like this week? And that's been a game changer for just the decisions we've made now in our family. Um, and that was probably about 6, 7 years ago.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I would call that, to answer your question, I would say that was probably when I really embraced
Yeah.
fatherhood.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, if you're willing to answer the question, because you had this season of we're about to have our first child. It's all fresh, it's all brand new. How
Mhm.
did you, in a minute or two, how did you protect your heart from not becoming hard, and how did you support your wife? It's like 28 days in, and this tragedy happens.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man, that was a that was definitely like, what's the word? That was a highlight in a weird way. That was a
mm,
highlight of my wife and I's marriage. Like,
mm,
it was
mm,
do or die.
yeah, yeah,
I remember, so, there was a lot of details when that all happened. I'm talking about that day,
yeah.
in itself. But um, during that season, I mean, my wife went like for 4 days and just didn't say a word.
Mm,
Was just in a shell,
yeah,
and I really, that hit me. It was like, okay, like, this is the hardest thing that I've had to deal with, but I have to lead my wife through this. Like, I have to take her and pull her up because she was, that'll wreck anybody, especially I think the wife,
yeah.
and how we're wired and how they're wired differently usually. Um, but that that season that glued us. Like, that
Mm,
was like, we heard so many stats during that too. I remember those first few weeks we were hearing stats, people saying like, oh man, like 80 some percent of people that lose kids like this, they don't make it. And so those were things that I was like, well, I'm glad I'm not part of those stats,
yeah.
and that was a decision that I was like, that's not me, that's not us. And then you fast forward to, you know, I guess not fast forward, but later, a week or two after that happened. I can't remember exactly the time frame, but we had the funeral service for our daughter Poet, and my wife was led worship, an entire worship set
Whoa,
for about 500 people.
whoa.
Like, you talk about, we have an entire collection of notes, handwritten notes,
Mhm.
emails, text messages, of people saying that, like, because of the way that we handled what we had to deal with our daughter, they have now decided to turn back and follow God, or
Mm,
come to God, follow God for the first time. Like, so many testimonials, just by leading through that season,
yeah.
with our head up and really trusting on God.
If there are one or two things that you felt like, and I know no dude wants to like, obviously it was God, right? God worked in you
Yeah.
guys and whatever, but practical, dudes like practical, how can I show up? What are one or two things you felt like you did right during that time to give her the space in the 4 days and know when to pop in and be there? What did that look like if you were to coach a guy in that?
Yeah. I definitely, I stayed close to her.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to go in my own cave
Mm,
as well and just disappear. Like, I don't know how to deal with this.
yeah.
There's no, maybe there is, but I don't think there's a book written on how to deal with that kind of thing. With exactly what we went through. Um, I stayed really close to her, I think would be one thing, and then two, I also reached out for a lot of help. Like, we had, we had several meetings with people that had also gone through very
Mm,
similar things that,
yeah.
it's like, "Hey, we need help." We'd spend a night at their house for dinner, talk to
Mm,
them. How did they deal with it? But talking to other people that had gone through the same thing was really helpful. Bringing in, uh, we brought in a counselor one day, just who had dealt with this kind of stuff, and it ended up we met with her for a while, and just there was a season of going through counseling too, of just how should we deal with our emotions, and how do we move forward, and there's a lot of negative things that can come out of that, but I think there was a lot of positive things too if it's handled right, and so I'd say that, you know,
yeah. Yeah.
definitely wouldn't wish upon anybody, but
Whew. Well, dude, thank you for sharing that.
yeah, yeah,
It matters. It's meaningful. Um, okay, on let's switch to a little switch this up a little bit, and then I'm gonna go into something. But what's one of your favorite things to do with your girls? Like as a father to connect with them, what's something that you guys just like time stops and you just are enjoying life together?
yeah, yeah. Man, I'd say 2 things come to mind right away. One, we do, pretty consistently, my wife and I switch every other month, so she'll do a month and I'll do a month, and just take them out one-on-one dates.
Hmm.
So I have a month, and it's each girl, gets a one-on-one date with me. Um, they, like, love that, and
Yeah.
it's such a simple thing actually, but I don't think very many people do it, and I
Yeah.
actually think it has way more impact than just a 2-hour 1 to 2-hour date. Whether you take them out to dinner and get ice cream, take them shopping, they love it when dad takes them shopping. But every time it's my month to do that, every other month, they are just like that's all I talk about. It's like, "When's my night? When's my night?" Um, and it's so easy to just to be like, to kinda have the intention to do that kinda stuff, but you have to do it. Like, we don't celebrate intentions, we celebrate results, right? And I think you've gotta do
Mm,
that. Like, you just gotta do it. Like, some people have these ideas that they think like, "Oh, I've got this idea, so I can check it off the box," but it's like, you really just gotta do it. And a lot of this stuff is simple. And it's simple to us, but it's a huge impact on our kids.
dude,
So that'd be
so
the
good.
first thing. Yeah, second thing, my girls love Fortnite, and I will
It's
jump on and play
fun.
Fortnite with them, and they think that's awesome. So I'll carry 'em to the win.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's great. I think um to come alongside and do things with your kids that they like,
Yeah,
then if you can enjoy that, because at the end of the day, it's so funny. Like, why do I do why do I surf or skate or play golf or whatever? Everything is like you're finding some sort of activity that really is pretty meaningless unless it connects you with another human being. And I guess I also understand disconnecting you from like work, to some level, although work can be fantastic if you're doing something you like. But
yeah,
to find something that you're spending time with the people you love, right? It doesn't matter if it's Fortnite or whatever.
yep.
um Okay, so you've mentioned this word a couple times, and I want to dig into this because I think our lives align a lot in this area. But this word transformation and this kind of like wild shift from status quo. So take us down this path of what this looked like for your family.
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned back in about 2017, we had spent some time just like crafting, my wife and I, like what's really important
Hmm.
to us. Um, and not just to go through the motions with this, but to actually create a filter. It's like, how do we make decisions in life as a family? And so we spent some time crafting, what's our mission, what's our vision, what's our values. And what we ended up crafting after that was the Fisk family is a family that doesn't settle with the status quo.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of like our thing. It's like that's how we make a lot of decisions. Like, is this just a worldly way, just the way that the world does it? Is this a normal? Is this the status quo? And not that normal is bad, but it can be bad. Depending on the situation. So that's kind of our thing.
Sounds very
We
rebel and create-ish.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
fits the theme
So
well.
there's the question, right? We're just going to dig into the transformation is going with rebel and create. So
Yeah,
2017, you come up with this. What are we about? What matters to us?
yep,
And then
yeah.
what?
Then what? So we crafted that. That was uh that was really a turning point, and it was probably, things didn't change a lot, I guess, at that point as far as like our life. I was building my businesses, my business partner, my wife and I, having kids. Kids were getting older.
Hmm.
It was probably 20, yeah, it's not probably, it was 2021. I had this just I felt like it was a God moment of like, "Oh, man, like, our life's about to change big." And honestly, like, we had planned we'd been a part of a group about 20 people that had planted a church, about 10 years prior to this, um, and which was, a church well over 1,000 people, really successful church. Businesses were going really well. Things were honestly, like, no issues really.
Mhm.
And here I am going, "Oh, man, life's about to change big time." And I remember I sat my wife down and I said, "Hey, I think God's telling me like we're supposed to move somewhere else. We're supposed to go somewhere. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm pretty like I have a pretty strong conviction right now. We're supposed to leave." And that was a crazy moment. She like broke down crying, like, "What?" But it was several months after that. It was like, okay, this is actually coming to get. This is we are supposed to leave. Um, and we ended up selling in 2021. We sold everything. Um, Everything we had for the most part, and we ended up buying a huge RV, bought a big truck. We traveled for about a year all over the country, 30 some states. Um, it was it was an interesting season because we were partially like on vacation because we are like, "Oh, this is amazing. We're always going somewhere new, discovering places, checking out all the cool things in the US to see." And then the other half of us was like, we don't have a home to go to when this is over, and we don't know where we're supposed to go. So we were just consistently praying as a family, God, you were clear to us that we're supposed to be leaving and going somewhere, but you haven't told us where we're going. And so it was a very outside the box, not normal situation. A bit like a tendency to be like fearful of like what's going on, but also very like, man, what a growth that year was
Mm,
for us to trust in God to be like, He's got us. And I can say that now confidently because of all the things that's happened since then. Where we're at now, like I said, we were in Washington State. We traveled for a good year, and then
you
ended
did
up
30 states in that year.
about
Just
30, I think 33 states.
and
Yeah.
mainly just like at like campgrounds or RV parks or what?
Yeah, we did a lot. Yeah, a lot of RV parks, state parks. A lot of private stuff. We'd even did hip camp quite a bit, where we would
Cool.
go stay like on people's property,
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. Like we spent like 6 weeks in Florida, and like half that time we were just staying in people's lots, like right on the beach. Like
that's
it was
epic.
amazing, like right on the white sand beaches. It was really cool. Um, and Yeah, so looking back now, it's like, man, God had us to that whole season. We were partially, like I said, we were partially on vacation, but partially just like discovering too what does God have for us. And everything just kept aligning, and here we are now in East Tennessee. Love it. There was a list of things that were like, this are the things that we are looking for. And one of them was it was like certain set of values of what
Yeah.
the community that we're gonna be moving into, things like that. But one of them was like, it's got to be the right church too. I value church
Mm.
big time, both my wife and I. And it's like we're not gonna go somewhere and just So we ended up spending probably like 5 months, 4 or 5 months in this area, visiting a different church every week
In the area that you moved to.
in the area we're at now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember calling a guy I'd met in this area when we'd first got to this spot, and it's like everything had lined up here except for the church.
Mm.
And I said, "Man, everything lines up here. This is where we feel like we're supposed to be." But like I have been visiting church after church after church, and I didn't move my family across the country to just go to just any other church. Like
Yeah.
we're looking for a church that's speaking the truth, or God's moving, that they're free to worship, and that's high value for them, and family's a high value. And he goes, you should check out this church. I'd heard about this, and so, long story short, he sends us these videos, these music videos of this church. We were like, "Oh, this is actually right down the road from us." We go check this church out. We were at the wits end of being like, "Oh, we're
Yeah.
supposed to keep moving." And we walked in this church, and it ended up being like a 5-hour service, like every single person, and it was like standing room only. I mean, people just standing in the back and stuff. Every single person ended up getting prayed for. That day, and our kids end up coming out from the kids area. They end up getting prayed for. Our kids are dancing on the stage. during worship and stuff, and we were like, "What is going on?" And then we left, and our kids were like, "We cannot wait to go back to that."
Wow.
We had been to dozens and dozens of churches across the country, and it was like, "Oh my gosh!" And now the people we've been able to meet at this church, the relationships, we bought 35 acres here. We're building out a whole resort area, and it's like, how did we did not 2 years ago, this didn't this I couldn't have imagined this, and we were just faithful to the call, what we felt like God was calling us to. Said, let's do it, even though the world says that's crazy. Why would you do that?
Hmm.
And here we are. We look back now, and we're like, my kids included, we're like, man, could you imagine if we would just stay, like we didn't go to where God was calling us. It's been a very amazing last couple years,
So when did
to
you
say the least.
it's epic story. When did you first move to Tennessee? Like when did you first go start that process?
Yeah, so we landed in Tennessee. We actually traveled the whole country, came to Tennessee, went to like Chattanooga, Nashville, spent several weeks in the area, and then ended up doing a whole loop all the way back to the Northwest of summer of 2022. We were traveling for a year, and someone reached out to me, and we were like, "Man, like we don't. Maybe we weren't supposed to go. Like nothing was
Yeah, yeah, you're
clear.
starting to have those
Yeah, like maybe we
questions.
weren't supposed to go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and oh man, so let me rewind a little bit. On our way, when we were in Nashville, so before got back to the Northwest, we basically did a whole loop over a year. Before we got back, just a few weeks before, because we basically went to Tennessee and then we kind of booked it back. Tennessee was our last stop, I guess, on the map for the most part. Um, we were in Nashville at a park one day. Just we took the girls to this park, and they were playing on some toys and stuff. And my wife and I are sitting on a bench talking. And I was like, you know what? It's just a normal day. And I was like, I'm gonna walk over to this building across the park. They probably got bathrooms over there. I gotta go to the bathroom. So I'm walking across the park, and all of a sudden, I just felt like this. I can't even articulate it, but it was like another God moment. Of like God just reminded me of Noah in that moment.
Mm,
And I've known about the story of Noah my whole life. I've read it 100 times, but I've never had the respect and clarity on it like I did that day. I'll never forget this moment in the park. And I realized like the I feel like I'm carrying this weight of like I'm supposed to be doing something that God's calling me to. My wife is a slightly kicking and screaming, but she's on board to follow her husband. My kids they don't know they don't really understand. They're like, oh, we're along for the ride, but it's kind of weird. My dad just took us from our friends and stuff. The only thing we knew,
yeah.
which our kids are homeschooled, but we're very involved in the church.
Yeah.
Um, and I went, oh my gosh, I've just read the story of Noah and went, he just, you know, had this epic vision that God gave him and built this giant boat and saved humanity. Where really it's like we don't see the details of knowing like how many times did Noah over the 120 years, how many times did he have to sit down with his wife and recast vision for her of like, no, God was clear to me, like this is what we're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
and his kids, and just consistently remind them not to lose track of the path that they're supposed to be on, while everyone else in the world that he tried to bring along said, "No, no, no, you're crazy."
Yep.
And I felt like, "Oh my gosh, I get it now." Like a small glimpse of it,
Yeah,
but I get a little
totally.
bit like what he probably went through. It wasn't. I don't think it was all roses. Um, so, anyways, I have that revelation that day. We end up back in the Northwest, and I'm like, man, maybe I don't know. Like maybe we weren't supposed to go. And we get someone sends me a message on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, I saw you. Like you're looking for a spot to land with your family and stuff. Just looking at your life and stuff." We had, YouTube videos and stuff going out, and
Nice.
we were basically documenting the stuff, and like, you should really check out this place called the Tri Cities in Tennessee. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. We spent time in Tennessee. So I look it up, and that day I told my wife, I was like, man, this sounds crazy, but I think we're supposed to go back to Tennessee. She's like, what? Like, we just came from there. We're not driving all the way back. That's a long trek with a big RV. So we ended up packing everything up and booked back, and we landed in that Tri Cities area, which is where we're at now. And man, the rest is history. Like the
Mm,
people here, the values they line up. We homeschool our kids. Like 24% of all the homeschool kids in Tennessee live in our community. So
wow.
there's just so much stuff for my wife and the kids, and again the church. It's just been amazing. So
That's epic. Dude, wild, man. And it's funny because just I said at the beginning that our stories align. We moved to Hawaii from California on this big faith move in June of
mm,
2021. So that,
Ah,
we first came in March of 2020 and we spent the first 2 months of COVID on Oahu. Um, but it was just this big adventure of we came back from that and we sold everything. We sold our houses. We sold, I mean, everything, left all our friends, left it all, man. And it
yeah.
was, we moved here and it was about a year, it was at 14 months. It was 14 months first to settle in. But now we're settled in and our kids call it home and it's epic. So
Wow.
definitely resonate with it, that
Yeah.
drive, that call. I mean, even I have a story of my wife coming in saying to me in my office one day, because we were going to move to Utah. So that's like we landed on Utah. We spent spring break of April 2021 in Utah. And we're like, this is where we're moving. This is the street. This is where our kids going to school. Like the
Mm,
whole deal. We got back from Utah, and that next morning, it was a Monday. My wife comes home from taking the kids to school, and she's like, "Don't laugh at me." But I started bawling in the car on the way to drop the kids off. I saw Brody running on the beach. Like she had this vision of him on the beach.
mm,
And so
mm.
I'm like, all right, well, let's go check out Hawaii, you and me, but we can't tell the kids because they think we're moving to Hawaii. So I think 7 days later, her and I are in Hawaii staying with one of my team members who live here. And I'm like, screw this place. I don't want to live here. It sucks. We're driving around. And then we turn this. And here's the deal, we're driving through this neighborhood about 10 minutes from where we live. And I'm like, this place sucks. Like, I don't want to live here. And then I said out loud to Sarah and God, I'm like, yo, I'm making this about me. God, if you want us to live here, like,
Mm,
I'm here. I'll do it. We turn the
yeah.
corner into this neighborhood and boom, it hit me. It's like, this is where we're supposed to move. And it was dope. And then God's so wild, bro. So this is not about me, but just to connect with you for 30 more
Yeah, no,
seconds.
this is good.
Uh, so we're staying in a condo with my team member, Hannah, and her family, sleeping on her couch bed. We come back from our drive. We're like, yo, we're going to live here. And I don't know, sometime that day, she's like, the neighbor 2 doors down has to move to Florida. They'll sell you their condo. So I straight bought this condo from this lady. I never went in the condo. I never met her face to face. We did everything via text. I mean, the purchase
Mm,
agreement, everything via text. Um, no real estate agent. I buy this condo. We go home. We tell the kids, hey, the condo wasn't that day, but I bought it over the course of 30 days. We sold
yeah.
our stuff. And then June. So you're talking April something to June 1st. We're there. And it's like it all lined up. My kids never been here to the Big Island. We fly in. We have the keys to this condo. We walk in and it was fully furnished. They had 6 boys living in it. So that's Airbnb now. We since bought a house.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but anyways,
yeah,
man, it's just like the adventure. And so I want to lean into that for you is men listening to this, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the status quo, the
yep.
normal. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what everybody does. Take me through that. If a dude's thinking that right now, like there is something burning in me, there is this adventure that's there, but I'm not stepping into that. What are your thoughts on how they can just freaking enter into that?
Yeah, yeah, and talking through the story again, I just remembered something too that's really crucial, or I think it's a really good piece too. We always hear, like, write down things that write down goals and stuff. If you write
Yeah.
down, it's just that much more important, or
Yeah.
it'll that more likely to happen and
Yeah.
things like that.
For sure.
Dude, when we were moving and we were selling everything off, we were just, putting stuff in boxes and doing yard sales and stuff. I found a journal from this was in 2021. I found a journal from 2020 or 2016, and I had a long list on one page of, like, all these things I wanted to do in life. And I'm sitting there reading it. I'm in the living room and I'm reading through this thing, and all of a sudden I just start bawling. I get to the last thing.
What?
I take it to my wife and I go, "Rebecca, read this list." And she reads it. She starts crying and she's like, we've accomplished everything on this list except for the last thing. I said, the last thing, which is what we're going to the last thing on the list was to go somewhere, buy enough property that we could have a multi-generational place where we could give our kids land and they could build houses if they want to stay in the area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's literally part of the reason why we're going too, is like, we're going to buy some land. And, that was on our list of things we want to do. I was like, and I had forgotten
Hmm.
that. I even
Mm.
written that down. But I think there's something important about writing this stuff down that's in our hearts, visions that God gives us,
Mm.
because we forget. We are we're consumers
Yeah, we
of lots of
forget.
things,
Yeah, okay,
and
okay.
we forget what we actually desire, we forget what God tells us, and then writing it down, it helps us. So I'm a huge fan of writing things down. I've always got a journal with me now. I'm just like,
Yeah.
and just to go back and look at that stuff and be like, "Oh, this is reminding me of what is important," or, you know. So anyways,
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that for a second because I think you know what I try to lean into is like, dude, I want to sit down. Like, here's Ned. I want to like get deep and pray with you and connect, and then I also want to go have a glass of whiskey and watch Step Brothers and then quote it, right? So like, I'm on these
amen.
both, yeah, these both sides, and sometimes I think when we lean into like this could be such a earthy podcast, and it's like, dude, just name it and claim it on the faith side, or just speak everything into existence on the maybe the
Mm,
like more, you know, I don't know what you'd call that, but like the earthy, you know, the universe is God kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
But to go in, okay, so I'll share a story and then I want guys to unlock this a bit who are like just us normal Joes who love God and also love whiskey and Step Brothers. Um, I found a journal, dude. So I'm a big journaler. I
yeah.
found a journal when I was in college. Our professor made us write 100 goals down, and I'm like 19, right? So you're like, buy a house before I'm 25, and blah, you know, like all this just stuff. I found the journal like I don't know within the last 3 years,
Mm,
and like 70% of those goals had been met. It was
wow.
wild. I'm like, check, check,
Isn't
check.
that so
It's
cool?
wild.
Yeah,
And so it's funny because it's not like I want to write down on a piece of paper right now. So this would be the status quo in my opinion. And then I want your opinion. Well,
yeah,
I'm going to get a Ferrari by 2025, right? Like, is that really in your heart or is that just like, I need to make something up, right? And, and,
yep,
and so the idea is when you are fully present and all the noise is set aside. That's why I like to go on a day or two retreat by myself a year to create that space.
mm,
What is inside of you and then get it out, write it down. Because, yeah, when you're at work on a Monday, you're going to kind of forget that. So you need to look back. But those, I love how you said, don't forget the dreams, you know, that the vision that God's put inside of you,
mm,
pursue those things. Um, it's not the name it and claim it. It's not to speak things into existence, but there's something there to ignite and pursue the vision and dreams that are inside of you. What are your thoughts more about what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, I think so, you know, I think if we just fit in with the rhythm of the world,
Hmm.
we're
Mm.
we're gonna miss out on opportunities to even have the visions and dreams.
Yeah.
So we have to be intentional with, I think, 2 things that stand out to me. Be intentional with getting ourselves around the right people.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, we talked about Greg, big visionary. Every time I talk to him, it expands my vision and my thinking, and people like that really that helps me a ton. And 2, I love hunting. Um, when I go out in the woods for
You
whether even if
kill
it's a day.
you kill
What?
you
I
kill
kill? Yeah,
animals?
yeah, I kill and drink whiskey? What's wrong with you?
We
So
gotta
I'm a big hunter, and man, I get, you know, the hunt is one thing.
Yeah.
There's value in that.
Yeah.
The kill, that whole thing. But man, there might be more value in it for me just to get out of the whirlwind of the day to day, so I can
Okay. Yes.
free my mind and let God talk to me, and let my mind work and think bigger.
Oh,
Think about what's
okay.
actually important because the day to day is not important.
That's the thing. The thing is the status quo and the normal keeps us so busy. Like literally
Yep.
everybody's so busy and we're busy with great stuff, man. We have great stuff all the time, which is good. But as the leaders of our homes, we must, like as the captain of the ship I like to call it, we must peel ourselves away from the crew, from the day to day, look at the compass, look at the map, look at where we came from and assess, are we headed in a direction that feels right and what we want? And if no, then let's tweak the stuff, start moving the direction, cast some vision to our family even when they're kicking and screaming, and then but we got to do that like every like 3 to 6 months or something, right? Like find a
Yeah.
rhythm. It's fine to be busy. It's fine to have all the sports and this and watch your Netflix show and Yellowstone's epic and all the stuff. It's all great. But if that's
Yep.
all you're doing,
Yeah.
you're missing
Yeah.
out
So
on your
so
call.
the culture says, you know, the priority is setting goals and hitting goals. I've been on the past year. I've been really big on rhythms over goals,
Hmm.
and so
Okay.
living life 7 days at a time. And
Mm.
it's not that I can't plan out in the future, but it's like having a 7 day rhythm. You said every 3 6 months or whatever. For me, I've found you know call it the Sabbath, whatever you want. But every Friday, we basically from Friday dinner, we take about a 24-hour period. We started this about a year ago,
Yeah.
and we don't make any plans for those 24 hours, and it is like a reset. The family looks forward to it every week 'cause it's like we get a we get a break and we get to let our mind think, we get to relax, and re-energize to start the next week versus this just go, 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 go. And so that has helped me um to be able to, like I said, it's almost like freeing the mind of like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
let my mind be able to think bigger and have those visions and stuff. And it's man, if you are just swimming and keep your head above water, you will never have big enough vision
Mm.
to for your family. It's just not possible.
So it's so cool to see where God challenges people, right? And I really want dudes to hear this because I'm going to share an area where I've been challenged, but I don't want dudes to go, "Well, I got to do what Mike's doing or I got to do what Ned's doing." Nope, you're missing it again. You're jumping into status quo. Jump into what works for you. Like
Yep.
what's God working on with you? But I remember, it's so funny. I remember a very specific moment where I felt God calling me to honor the Sabbath.
Mm.
And he challenged me like 3 or 4 weeks in, and there was this big like roadblock in something I was working on. So I get on the phone on Sunday, and it's nothing wrong. Like handle stuff on
Yeah.
Sunday, right? I'm not
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
legalistic. This was for me
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this moment, and the
Yep.
people put me on hold, and I have this little voice in my head going, "Hey, you're trying to control this. You're trying to solve this. That's not what today is, dude. Be free. Chill out. You're not a slave." So I'm on hold, like having this wrestle, right? It felt like a 2 minute hold. It was probably like 15 seconds. And so then I just hung up. I just hung up. I said, okay, I'll deal with this tomorrow. And then I wake up to like an email of everything was solved, right? It was all handled. I didn't need to do anything. It was epic.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
for me right now, so because I want to, so think about this for a second. I want to hear more about your 7 day rhythm. The challenge that like my habit that I'm working on Q1 of this year is sleeping for 7 hours
Mm.
because I feel like I've been the guy who's like, oh, it's 3:45 or it's 4 a.m. I'm such an animal to get up. And I'm realizing like, I don't know, that feels a little bit more ego in me and like people going, "Oh, that's crazy you got up that early," or "That's crazy you had a meeting that early." And I'm like, "Wait a second. Am I just trusting in my own ability to put in a massive amount of work, or am I
Mm.
trusting God that he's in this with me?" So it's been a challenge, dude. Last night, I'll be honest, I got 6.5, but over the course of 25 days, I pretty much hit it almost every day but two. And so
Nice.
that's an area for me where I'm being challenged to have a rest. So for
Yeah.
you in this 7 day rhythm, what are a couple other things that you're finding are helpful in this rhythm for you?
Yeah, so, like I said, so we do, like, a big meal on Fridays,
Uh-huh.
so the kids look forward to that,
Will you have
sometimes we'll
people
even
over for that? Like if it just happens to happen or no?
so we right now, we're in the process of building our house and our property,
Got
so
it.
we're still living in our RV, so we don't
Okay.
have the great space. During the summer, that's what we did. We'd have
Oh,
people
cool.
over outside, it's nice, but we just had 0-degree weather here last week in Tennessee, it was crazy.
That's
And then it
crazy,
was 70
bro.
again yesterday, I was like, "Wow, okay."
Oh, that's crazy.
Um So yeah, it just depends. Our situation right now is not the best for that, but we can't wait. Like that's something as we've been building out our house plans. It's like, okay, how do we make the table bigger?
Mm,
That way we can have more people involved.
yeah.
So, um, so big meal, and then it's really just like you use the word legalistic. Legalistic, I love that because that is exact opposite of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And if there's something big that comes up that we want to do that Friday or Saturday, or whatever, it's like we're gonna do it. And sometimes we'll go out and we're not just sitting around not doing anything. We'll go out and
Yeah.
hang out with friends or whatever, but we're trying not to work. A lot of times Saturdays are like get stuff done at the house and
Oh yeah.
things like that. It's like we're trying to stay out of just the um that status quo, that rhythm of just work, 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 work. Um so
Love it.
yeah, it's been really good for us. I've loved it. It's been one of my favorite things in the past year we've implemented for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, and it doesn't matter when people do it, right? So people hear this, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
when, but carving out that space. And your kids sometimes will kick and complain about it, like, "Hey, we're having a family day tomorrow." Like if I went and told my kids right now, "Good news, we're having a family day tomorrow," they'd all probably be pissed because they have some sort of thing. But I'll tell you what, if I lock all their phones in the glove box and we go, by like noon, they're connecting and together and whatever. And then I'm sure there'll be fights and stuff throughout that time, but it's still creating like the messy, beautiful, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
Dude, okay, I got to share this with you because your story kind of reminds me about it. We do like a morning thing with our kids every morning before they head up. We have like 3 homeschool, 2 different schools for different reasons. And, I've been reading The Shack to my kids. Have you picked up
Mm.
that book in like a long time? I don't know if it's like
No,
10 or 15 years old.
it's been a long time, yeah. I know what book you're talking about, though.
Oh, bro, so I'm reading it like 10 minutes a morning to my kids, and this story, because it's this dad, his daughter is kidnapped and killed, and she's
Yeah.
gone, and it's like his story of him and God reconnecting, and, like, I've cried 3 times at 7 AM
Mm.
reading this for 10 minutes to my kids, unlocking some things for them about a relationship between, because what you and I are talking about is this messy but beautiful wrestling, and that's it even hit me the other day. Like Israel means wrestle with God,
Yeah.
and are we entering into that as fathers with God ourselves? Are we entering into that with our spouses, with our kids? That this beautiful mess that we get to be a part of, family, is the thing that's shaping us into like the people we were designed to be
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so the wrestling, anyways, it's
That's
been on
good.
top of mind.
I'll have to, I'm gonna add that to my list. That'd be a good one.
Dude, it's yeah.
What age are your kids you're reading it with?
So my youngest is 11 and my oldest is 17, and so I'm reading it with
Okay.
all of them, and
All of them.
yeah, all of them, and it
Cool.
feels it feels right. Yeah.
Relative, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally, totally.
Cool.
And it's cool too, because like even we started watching The Chosen a little bit, and I really love
Yeah.
how they portray Jesus. Like in one episode, Jesus was making fart noises because some kids were like hiding behind a rock looking at him. And it's a similar thing in this, where Jesus, like just in this morning, was like kind of like joking with the guy. And I'm like, man, that just feels so much more like, gosh, why am I so serious all the time? Like, I feel like
Mm,
sometimes I'm so serious about this stuff. It's like,
yeah,
dude, don't be so serious.
yeah, yeah,
Enjoy this. So,
yeah.
I mean, it sounds like if you guys were on the road for that long, is there a couple books that you'd recommend dads read with their kids?
Um, let's see. Trying to think. I'm a big reader too. I read a lot of books. Um,
Or maybe just a book that's hit you, that's been really life transformational for you.
yeah. I mean, I could list a lot of business books that have been transformational for me. I would say, the have you read Greg's book called Family ID?
I have not.
That's actually a really good book too.
I think I
The
have it in
I,
here.
I would say I'd say one of the best like transformational books as far as like for families and stuff and like parenting. My wife and I have gone through it a few times and we've actually led some classes on it. But have you ever done growing kids God's way?
I've checked some of it out, but I haven't gone through like their workshop or anything.
That's been super impactful for us. Yeah, I've loved that book a lot.
Love it.
It's an intense book, but um, it's unfiltered parenting.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Michael, we've talked about so many great things, and we're coming to the end of our time together. Before I ask my final 2 questions, is there anything unsaid or anything kind of sitting in your mind or heart that you haven't shared that you'd want to, with any of the dads that are listening?
I think we covered some good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Ned, I would say, just reiterate, like, to summarize it, like, don't be afraid to not fit in, to not be
Yeah.
normal. The world wants us to be normal. The world wants us to just go through the rhythm of and fit in like everyone else. Um, but we're called the bigger things. We're called the bigger vision. Set that time aside so you can have that margin in your life, whether it's once a week, once a month, whatever it is. Have build some margin. Like be intentional about
Mm.
margin
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your
yeah.
life,
Yeah.
so you can have that get that space to be able to think about what's actually important and be intentional about that time. Um, and I think that'll have huge impact on our families. That's been huge for me these past few years. And man, like I said, we traveled for a year. that year of having very little distraction, we went from just busy, 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 busy 7 days a week
Mm,
in 2021 and before that. I mean, we just did not stop. I remember that first week when we traveled, that whole year, but it was like, what do I do with my hands moment? It was just like we have nowhere to
mhm.
be, nowhere to go. That was not everyone could take a year off like I did, but that was so influential on my family. I think that will set a whole different trajectory for my family from here on out for multiple generations.
Yeah.
And so if you can carve that margin out in your life, um, I think that'll help us a lot to get out, rather than getting caught up in that day to day rhythm.
So, one thing I wanna say, and then I have a 2 3 questions for you. You good on time?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
The value and the benefit of you taking that year of travel, I think sometimes when us dads are like, "Okay, I'm gonna make the move from California to Tennessee or from wherever to wherever, Washington to Tennessee," we try to do it as fast as possible and get our kids back into that 8-day a week routine as fast as
Mm.
possible because that's so I think when you peeled away from that or the value and the beauty in that is you were able to set some new standards and rhythms because you didn't just jump into seeking. Would you agree that that was like a kind of a resetting or a Sabbath year for you to
Oh my,
reset?
oh my gosh, Ned, you hit it on the nail, man. My biggest fear when we decided to land in Tennessee
Yeah.
was I do not want to get back into just go, go, go with no end in sight. That just 7 days, just full calendar. So we have been very conscious of just not filling our calendar with just anything and everything that comes our way. Um, being much more, don't react to everything that way. Being much more intentional with our time. And that's where the Sabbath came for us. Obviously, the Sabbath isn't new, but for
Yeah.
us, we
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
never even considered it, and that's where that was like, you know what, God designed this, for a reason. He rested in 7 days. Maybe I should just follow those steps. That's where that came from,
Yeah.
and that has been amazing. So I think you're right on. It wasn't like we went from like we're moving because work is moving us over here,
Right.
and we got to
Right.
get back in right away and plug right back in. It was just like we went a year of just nothing really, and then have slowly been and very, very cautiously introducing things back into our rhythm.
Yeah. And I would say, even if it's like the job, so guys listening, if you're like, hey, I have to move and start my 9 to 5 because I got transferred, still create a window. And I'll tell you this from my experience, and then Michael, tell me yours. Um, I don't think if your kid misses a year of baseball or a year of football or a year of whatever or a season of it, it's not the end of the world. We put such an emphasis on whatever it is. And yes, maybe like for one of my kids, it was a big loss. Like they had gymnastics 16 hours a week, moved here, did not connect. And it was a big loss for her to find something new. But in the messy switch of not jumping into the same rhythm, because we honestly just didn't go to church every week, right? Because that was a big part for before. Um, our kids became better friends. And what I've been leaning into with my kids is you may if you do this right or if you respect and love your siblings, they could be your best friends at 40 years old and then your kids could be like homies with your cousins and stuff. So I think there's a big opportunity for us to create boredom so that our kids
Yeah,
have to hang out together.
yeah. My middle daughter was sitting on the couch earlier today, and she was just sitting there not doing anything. And I said, "What's going on? What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm bored." And I sat down. I said, "Hey, look, this is really good. Being bored sometimes is a really good thing." And
Yeah.
we had to talk about that. And I agree with you, Ned, on that. I don't want to create division with this statement, but so my kids have been in. I grew up in sports my whole life.
Mhm.
My kids have been glued to soccer, dance, ballet, all the performances, all that stuff. Um, However, I think we've been lied to that
No.
that 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 is you have to do that
Mhm.
to create a good kid or to be a good parent. Um, and it was that was a difficult thing to go like we're gonna go travel for a year.
Yeah.
And our kids are gonna pull them out of all this stuff that they're in right now. Man, I felt like a blindfold was pulled off of us
Mhm.
in that year of being like, "Oh my gosh, like, it's not about this. It's not about that." There's so much more to life and so much more to raising our kids, um, than just to try and teach our kids to fit in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that we haven't pushed that ourselves. If a kid loves something and is passionate about it, then we're gonna
Yeah.
work with you to do it. But if
Yeah,
my
that's
son's like, I don't want to do any of these things, or it's just not my, and I want the freedom to go skate or surf or whatever, like, okay, okay,
yep.
because it's like, why am I trying to force you to have a freaking busy sketch? It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
I think that having a healthy rhythm with that time off that you think is good for your family,
yeah,
and every father has to make their own decision. I think that that is more important than a kid being stuck in basketball or even excited to go to basketball. And I'm pro all that stuff.
yeah,
But don't let it don't sacrifice your rhythm,
mm,
a healthy rhythm for your family.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
bro, love it. Okay, we could keep talking forever. Lots more questions
yeah, we
going through
could.
my head, but let me ask you my final question. I'm gonna ask you one question I've been asking people, and then my final. What type of grandfather do you want to be? This is so left field, but you're talking multi-generational, you're talking about building property for family. So I want more men to take themselves out of just this season of my kids live with me till they're 18, and I want them to think, "Whoa, my role as a grandfather is going to be super important. I never thought about it." What type of grandfather do you want to be in 60 seconds or less?
Yeah. You know, I want to leave a legacy. I talked about, the land and create a place. I'd call it an outpost versus over cribs. Everyone says, oh, they want to build their big house and stuff for them,
Mm,
but it's like I want to build an outpost for my entire family and other families to be that can, spend time here and learn it and what we're building and be inspired by what we're doing. So I want my future grandkids to look back, even after I pass or whatever, and be like, this whole thing that is here that we get to be a part of was built from Michael,
mm,
because of a vision that he'd given. He left where he was, where what he lived in. He moved his family across the country and planted here and built all this stuff out for us. So I think that's like legacy is really important to me. I think that's amazing. And just as a guy, picture myself as a grandpa, being just a man of wisdom, and being patient,
yeah.
someone that can, their grandkids can just come sit with them and just be content. Um, I think that would be really, really amazing.
Mm. Sit with. I love it. Sit with. Well, my final
Simple.
question was going to be about legacy, and you answered the question. So, Michael, dude, this was so fun, bro. I really loved getting to know you. I love hearing the dad you are, the intentional man you are, your dedication to your marriage and your community and life. Continue to just pursue rhythm and connection with God and those that he placed in your care. And then sharing that with the world, dude. So I look forward to hopefully future conversations, coming and checking out that property one day. And
Yeah.
dude, much love and blessings to you and your family.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everything you're doing. Loving it.
All right, my friend. Till next time. What an incredible conversation. Ah, so powerful. I didn't want it to end. I mean, some of the things like, do you just feel like you're fitting in? Are you stepping out in faith of a dream that you might have had as a father? Are you so caught up in the day to day, just busyness of life that you're not pausing to connect with who you are and who your family is? So, guys, I highly encourage you. Like, pause, create pause. Like I loved how he said that he creates margin in his life. Do you create margin? Do you create space to sit with yourself and just think like, hey, what matters to me? What matters to me as a father, as a husband, as a leader in my community? Really powerful, really powerful. Men, this comes down to our identity. Like, are we just a paycheck and are we just putting a roof over this family's heads? No, fathers need to know who they are, and our world is in desperate need of this, right? I mean, look around, we need leaders. And this isn't just men, this is we just need leaders. And where does this start? It starts in the home, and you as the father have the opportunity to lead inside your home, co-lead, work together, but we're talking about you in your role. But dads, we must know how to love, serve, guide, provide, and protect. And this is why I launched Adventure of Fatherhood. First started off with a children's book. Now there's 3 online courses that it's helping dads to see who they are and step into the fullness of their identity so that they can lead their home. So go check that out, adventureoffatherhood.com. If these conversations are powerful and you're engaged and it's helping you, please write a review. It helps spread the word that fatherhood matters. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned. Shout together. Let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.